Welcome to the City Current Show, powered by Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services.
This show focuses on sharing good news and powering the good in our community. Now here's your host, City Current CEO, Jeremy Park.
Welcome back to the City Current Show, powered by Higginbotham. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference, empowering the good. And we love talking about the power of entrepreneurialism. And that's why we're honored to have with us Michael Dermer. He's the CEO of The Lonely Entrepreneur. How are you doing?
I'm great, Jeremy. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, you've got a book, you've got tons of resources, you have a platform, an ecosystem. So we have a lot to talk about for sure. But this starts with your backstory as an entrepreneur, because you know the highs, you know the lows, and you know bringing it back and making it bigger than ever. So talk about your background as an entrepreneur and what led you to launch The Lonely Entrepreneur.
Yeah, Jeremy, it's been quite a journey. I started my career as a corporate lawyer in New York. I was an M&A guy, and I literally stumbled upon and started the first company in the US to reward people for being healthy. I was out to dinner with a couple of friends of mine, and one of my friends' wives said, for every 10 women that don't follow their prenatal care, it costs the healthcare system $1 million. And one of my other kind of snarky New York investment banker friends said, wait a minute, if it really costs $1 million for 10 women, why don't you just pay them all 10 grand? And that was it. And so left and started what got to be known as the first company in the US to reward people for being healthy. Left an incredibly prestigious law firm that you just don't leave. And went to the healthcare industry and said, we're going to pay people to be healthy, to which they didn't respond, well, we haven't heard of that before. They responded, we're never going to do that. We're never going to pay people to do the things that they should be doing. So like a lot of your audience had to fight the entrepreneurial fight, some very lean early years evangelizing this, and eventually kind of took some venture capital and grew like crazy from 20, 30 employees to 700 over the course of a couple of years. And then 2007, on top of the world, as you know, Jeremy, it was a SaaS license business. We were trying to decide, are we going to take more capital or are we going to go public, whatever? And literally almost got destroyed overnight by the 2008 financial crisis. We were fortunate enough to have many of the biggest companies in America, including Tennessee companies like Healthways and Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee. But as you remember, in 2008, they got decimated by the crisis. And so when they went down, we almost went down with them, and through the work of some talented people, kind of battled and scrapped and clawed and made our way back out and started to grow again. And on the other end of the financial crisis, everybody was interested in healthcare. And we got approached by some investment bankers and got bought. So it was a great ending, but a wild story, as you can imagine.
Carry that into then The Lonely Entrepreneur, and go ahead and describe, when you talk about The Lonely Entrepreneur, I mean, it is a book, but it's way more than that now. Obviously, it's a company, it's a platform, it's an ecosystem. So how do you describe The Lonely Entrepreneur?
Yeah, the way it came about, Jeremy, is I was in New York relaxing for the first time in a decade, and I was helping people for fun, friends starting businesses. And one of them said, being an entrepreneur is really lonely. And I kind of went, but didn't really think about it. And then 2 weeks later, I was walking down the street with a buddy of mine, and I said, lonely entrepreneur. And he's like, what did you say? And I said, lonely entrepreneur. He's like, oh my God, what is that? I'm like, what do you mean? It's nothing. It's a phrase. He's like, are you kidding me? And he goes into a Starbucks and goes, watch this. And I'm, what is he going to do? He yells at the top of his lungs, who here is a lonely entrepreneur? And literally everybody put their hand up. And I was like, oh. And so you realize that there's all these people with passion and energy and great ideas, but it wasn't turning into success. And I was like, if you could wake up and do anything, which I could, that would be really cool to fix. But you're like, how do you do that? And what I noticed really quickly, Jeremy, was that while entrepreneurship was so important to our society, we never gave people a map. There were great programs in there, like small business development centers and incubators and accelerators, but it was kind of this disorganized ecosystem. And I was a technology guy. And I was like, why isn't there like a one-stop shop platform for entrepreneurs? And it didn't exist, so we built it. So we built this thing called the Learning Community that's got 2,000 learning modules and group coaching and a place to get your questions answered. And for me, what was really exciting is you could help people everywhere because it was a platform. And so that led to the launch of the company, The Lonely Entrepreneur. We wrote the book about that whole journey that I just mentioned. And we've even have formed what we call TLE Foundation, which is our nonprofit, where organizations give us dollars so we can give the platform away to the constituents that they they care about. So the lonely entrepreneurs, we always kid around and say there'll be a lonely entrepreneur bourbon someday, but right now it's been really fun to watch us, have an impact on a lot of people that are, putting their heart and soul into these ventures.
Yeah, let's definitely dive in deeper because I think, each one of these components, there's a lot to it. So start with the learning community because you mentioned thousands of learning modules. So talk about, that, where that starts, what that's like, walk us through kind of that pacing because for those with an idea that don't know where to start, that's the perfect starting place. And so give us a little bit of where that's geared toward.
Yeah, I mean, we really wanted to say, regardless of where you are in your journey, you need hands-on help day to day. And so you're like, okay, what does that mean? Well, the first thing we meant was, why shouldn't all the information you need to learn be organized and curated in one place? So whether it's sales or marketing and finance, some people really know finance but don't know marketing and vice versa. So that's the 2,000 learning modules. But then it's the on-demand help, right, that people need day to day. And you're like, well, how do you do that at scale? And so we created online group coaching, so people can sign up for an unlimited number of online group coaching sessions on whatever topic they're interested in. And then what we call our community, which is a place where people can go and get their questions answered real time by members of our team. So, Jeremy, we don't think it's one of those things. We think all of those things have to be together because some people can learn on their own, but some people need hands-on help. And what's fun for us is we're taking people that, regardless of where they are in their journey, instead of having to go all over the place, now have one place they can go and hopefully give them a better chance of success.
And then when you look at scaling up, you've got Sidekick Consulting that takes a really in-depth approach as well. So talk about that.
Yeah, there's a certain point where, obviously having a platform and things like group coaching helps, but you need kind of one-on-one help to do it. And, what better name than Sidekick, right? We're all, as we like to say, we're all lonely entrepreneurs. And for any of your audience that have been there, it's not one thing, right? It's all these things at the same time as you grow. And so the way we designed our practice is literally to be your sidekick, to really get in there, help you. And, day one, it's this, and day two, that, and day three, it's that, and hopefully bring experienced professionals to the table. What we always say is you shouldn't have to learn by putting your hand on the stove. And I think that's the way entrepreneurship, as you and I have talked about, Jeremy, has been in a lot of cases. People say like fail fast, right? And we're going to try to see if they can maybe learn fast and fail a little less.
I know that entrepreneurs, the mentorship is extremely important, the sidekick, just like we're talking about, but also access to capital. And so you've got a lot of resources, you've got a large network. Talk about some of those other key ingredients for success.
What's interesting about access to capital is that especially now, there's growing capital sources available for all different stages and sizes and minority populations. And the problem is, if you take like a CDFI, 99% of the people that walk in the room won't get funded, right? And many of them could if they were further along. So Jeremy, the access to capital part has to work with the guidance. It has to get them to be further along so they're actually fundable. So I think America and certainly cities, definitely places in Tennessee, have done a great job of making more access to capital available. But you still see the vast majority of companies not able to access it because they're just not up to snuff. So we've got, I think it's now 250 capital resource and partners that we bring to the table for, grants, equity, for Black entrepreneurs, for military entrepreneurs. But the universal theme is that 9 out of 10 need to be coached up. So that's why being part of the learning community or taking advantage of Sidekick is hopefully how we're playing our role to get that funnel from idea, okay, business to a CDFI or a venture fund or even a grant program will fund an entrepreneur.
This will tie into the foundation, which you mentioned earlier, but talk about working to really drive the passion on your end around underrepresented communities.
Yeah, Jeremy, what was interesting to me about having a platform is the ability to help everybody. There's a story of a young kid who walks 20 miles in the middle of Kenya to go to a center where he can learn for an hour. And while he walks, he has his phone in his hand, right? And so obviously it's a different type of access. But if you think about our Black communities, Hispanic communities, LGBTQ communities, returning citizens, doing their own thing, especially when they have some of the challenges that somebody like me who went to a great college and law school didn't have, right? The systemic challenge. So the question is, how do they do their own thing? Especially think about somebody that's being released from prison, right? Like a lot of times they've got to be able to do their own thing. So for us, the ability to put a platform in their hands and help the organizations that are helping them. There's just organizations that are helping the Black community, prison communities, the military community. Think about when people get out of the military. What a platform does is the ability for us to enable them, to give them the tools to do something that, more and more becomes a part of their life. So we've launched our Black initiative to support 100,000 Black entrepreneurs, 100,000 Hispanic, 100,000 LGBTQ, and a whole bunch of other initiatives. But really, at the end of the day, it's our model of being able to put something in their hand that can help them at every stage, that hopefully is not just enabling us, but the community organizations across, let's say, Tennessee, that are trying to help them start their own businesses, but may not have the capability to do it. And a lot of that is all done through our foundation, which is TLEFoundation.org.
Something that I think is really interesting when you think about entrepreneurship now, and as you alluded to, like a young man with a cell phone, like now a young man with a cell phone using like Canva can be an illustrator and a digital marketer. And so like, I think perspective, which you talk about in your book, perspective is really important now, that anyone can be an entrepreneur. It's around perspective, your skill sets, leveraging passion. But I think, it's a cool new opportunity because of technology and things like your cell phone, where anyone and everyone now can really be an entrepreneur. But like you said, you need the coaching, you need the guidance, you need those guide rails. And so talk about kind of that aspect around kind of the trends with entrepreneurship, like with the cell phone, and what that means for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, back in the day, the crazy people like me that left prestigious law firms to start business, that was an entrepreneur. I mean, that was your traditional entrepreneur. And now it's not really a job, it's a perspective, right? If you see the studies, I think it's from Junior Achievers about high school kids, over 60% of high school kids say they want their career to be their own business, right? And they may never identify themselves as an entrepreneur. Every Uber driver usually have some kind of side gig, right? So it's I don't want to say it's every man and woman, but it's basically in all our lives, one way, shape, or form. But I think, and you alluded to it, Jeremy, I think the one disservice we did is we said, as long as you have passion and a good idea, you're good, right? And we wouldn't say that about driving a car or performing heart surgery. Or if somebody said, hey, I'm gonna do heart surgery tomorrow, and they'd be like, did you go to medical school? You're not like, nah, but I'm really passionate about it, right? Like, and in entrepreneurship, we're okay with the patient dying, and we shouldn't be. And so when technology enables that, what we should be doing is teaching people a bunch of skills that they can take that passion, right? And they can take that energy and they can take that good idea and actually do something about it, as opposed to, I'll jump out of the plane and figure out if I have a parachute later. And I think that's the opportunity with technology that exists, is it's so ubiquitous. You can have access to it wherever you are. But I think part of the mentality has to be is that, as we like to say, passion, grit, and a good idea is not enough. You have to learn skills. We always use the analogy of a mom. Like if you ask a mom, did you think you were a great mom the day you had your first child? And most of them say, well, I'm just struggling to make sure I don't kill this little person, right? And then it's not that they weren't passionate about it, but they were committed to it and they learned. And then when they had their second child, they kind of had it. And that's what we're trying to do. You don't just magically become a good entrepreneur because you're passionate. And we always say it all the time, like if you go to an investor event, is anybody here not passionate, right? Because they would probably stand out more than. So you try to embrace the fact that you have to get better at a craft. And a great example of that is songwriters. I mean, think about how many songwriters with incredible talent could benefit by having just some business acumen and business understanding and understanding about the industry, that when they landed in Nashville, right, or landed in Memphis, would have just so much of a better chance of success. So that's really what we're trying to do.
To me, that's exactly the right perspective. And I think that's so important because, just like we talk about like tennis pros or coaches or things. Just because you know how to coach doesn't mean you know how to run the business of it and communicate. Yeah. So there's a lot of business application that has to take place. So I love it. Well, you yourself, I know you do obviously a lot in New York. You cover Tennessee as well. You've got Nashville, Memphis, but this being, online opens up where anybody around the nation, really around the world. So talk about how the community can access, how can we support your efforts? How can we get involved?
First of all, Jeremy, thank you to you and City Current. We've known each other for a couple of years now and really appreciate the support of what we're doing. For individual entrepreneurs, like for example, our learning community is $1,000 a year. We try to keep it really cute. They can just go to lonelyentrepreneur.com and take advantage of that. And then for people that are a little bit further along that need one-on-one consulting, we have our Sidekick Consulting that's there. But we're equally excited about what we're doing on the philanthropic side. So what I would suggest is that, almost every corporation, philanthropy, government is to try to empower a group of people they care about. And one of the ways that they can empower a group of people they care about in the year 2024 is by giving them a chance to kind of bring their passion, their potential to life. So organizations can fund a certain number of entrepreneurs they care about. So if you're interested in the military or returning citizens or the Black community or even the high school you went to, the way it works is for a certain amount of dollars, they can support a certain number of the entrepreneurs in their choice, and they can do all that at our foundation website, which is called TLEFoundation.org.
Awesome stuff. Well, Michael Dermer, the Lonely Entrepreneur, greatly appreciate everything you and your amazing team are doing to power the good. So thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks a lot, Jeremy, for having me, and always appreciate the support from City Current.
Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services is proud to power the City Current Show. We're a people-first company that protects what matters most, the families, businesses, and trailblazers that keep our community going. As one of the nation's top independent insurance firms, Higginbotham is a single-source solution for business insurance, employee benefits, HR services, and personal insurance that's customized for you. We're here to serve you, the people you care about, and your community. Call 866-377-1959 or visit higginbotham.com.